This is a Calexandra recording. Hitchups by the Antic Repartee, or AvannaK. Chapter 1. Hiccuped. You are so busted. Those were the last words Hiccup would hear from his longtime crush, and they hurt him more deeply than any dismissal she had given him before. For in that four-worded sentence lay the truth of their distance from one another, their priorities, their loyalties, their morals, all worlds apart. The most promising Viking of their age had not even the natural curiosity to find out why the chief's son had saddled a night fury hidden in a remote cove. She was programmed never to question, just to trust authority, trust what she had been taught, and to do. Don't think, do. The perfect Viking. The exact opposite of everything he was. Da-da-da, we're dead, Hiccup blew out. For one wild moment, Hiccup had the impulse to run after her, to kidnap Astrid and force her stubborn mind to accept the possibility that thousands of years of Viking teachings were incorrect. He could hop on Toothless, catch her before she reached the village, and take her on a ride that would change her world. After all, how could anyone not be moved by the free, weightless feeling of air pushing all around them, or the moist caress of the clouds on their cheeks, or the sight of every tower building and the rocky overhang shrunk down to the size of a thumbnail, and all on the back of their reputed natural enemy? If he could just get her on Toothless, Astrid would see for herself the great benefits of befriending a dragon. He could show her the good that they were capable of, the pointlessness of this war. They could bond over the experience. He could gain a human companion to talk to. Hiccup's shoulders slumped, and the slightly upturned corners of his mouth reversed into a dejected glower. He was getting ahead of himself, like always. What did it matter who Astrid told? He was leaving anyway. He had his supplies packed, a note for his father explaining everything without revealing too much, though Astrid shouting about him being in league with dragons might have offset the content of that. From his peripheral, Hiccup noticed the dark, hulking shape of Toothless retreat, jarring him from his internal funk. He fully turned to see his best friend trotting off, cool as a cucumber and radiating intense irritation. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, where do you think you're going?" asked Hiccup, with his own flavor of attitude, despite correctly reading the dragon's mood as something not to be messed with. Toothless pitched a snort over his shoulder and continued to amble towards his favorite resting spot beneath the roots of a large conifer. Hiccup ran after him. Toothless, stop! I didn't bring her here, I swear. She must have followed me. Toothless stopped in his withdrawal, so suddenly that Hiccup tripped over his own feet just to keep from running into the large, dark hide. The dragon nudged Hiccup's slightly swollen wrist with his nose, sprained from Astrid's quick and skillful snap. She doesn't know her own strength, Hiccup tried lamely, wincing at the touch. Toothless's face said it all. Bullshit. I don't like her. Anyway, we need to get out of here. My dad's back from the hunt. He seems to be under the impression that I want to kill a monstrous nightmare tomorrow. As if I could. Hiccup began to trudge back to his pack, shoulders still hunched in defeat. And who was I kidding anyway? I mean, really, how long did I think this little charade would go on for? I didn't even think of how it would all end. Of course there was going to be some point where I would have to choose. His mumbled tirade slowed to a stop by the time he reached his dropped supplies. Astrid's axe, the one he had thrown from her grasp in a rare bout of strength, now lay forgotten next to his gear. Had it not been this particular girl who had told him to figure out which side he was on? Now I know, he sighed to himself aloud, and never again would it be in question. Bypassing the weapon, Hiccup gripped the thick leather strap and slung the woven basket over his shoulder, teetering for a moment at the awkward weight. He almost walked into Toothless for the second time when he turned to find the dragon trailing him 2 feet behind him. He was really going to have to practice being more observant of his surroundings. Toothless prodded the pack with his nose, making an expectant noise. No, there's no fish in here, just some clothes and supplies for myself. As soon as we get settled someplace far, far away, I'll use it to cart around your lunch again, you spoiled salamander. The night fury crooned and rubbed his head against Hiccup's side. The dragon could feel the distress rolling off the human in waves. Hiccup was scared, hurt, and upset with the situation he had been forced into, and he was using casual sarcasm as a crutch, like always. Hiccup could feel some of the tension in his face ease as he absorbed Toothless's warm, unwavering support against his ribs. He placed a hand on top of the dragon's head and gave a light scratch. "Come on, bud," he said, feeling calmer than he had moments ago. He knew, deep, deep down, that he was making the right decision. For both of them. "Let's get out of here before the Vikings start pouring into the cove." It felt weird referring to the Vikings as though he were from a separate unit, but not as weird as it could have sounded coming from his own mouth, considering that he spent most of his life isolated from his own culture. "Let's head south for now. I think I can survive a little easier in a warmer climate." Toothless wiggled his butt in excitement before settling to give Hiccup a moment to leg up. Understanding the silent cue without even realizing he had, he paused just before lifting himself up and cast a last look down at the axe, an axe representing the life he had planned on leaving behind. An ostracized, misunderstood, and lonely life. The Viking life he could never quite acclimate to. He felt a strong wave of resentment towards that axe. "Night Fury!" Automatically, 1/3 of the village threw themselves on the ground, despite it being broad daylight, clear skies, and not a dragon in sight. Regardless of the number of villagers with their heads under their hands, the young Viking in training managed to get a good deal of attention as she came bounding out of the northern forest. "There's a Night Fury! In the forest! In the cove! Hiccup's been keeping it a secret!" Astrid gasped, turning to any adult that faced her. "Please, we've got to get over there now. I think he's running away on it." Normally, people would laugh whoever made such a ludicrous accusation straight off the island. But this was Astrid Hofferson, the most no-nonsense, focused, Viking-like female of her age group, arguably of the island. Once confirming that no offspring of lightning and death circled the heavens, a crowd began to form around the girl. "Calm down, lass," one robust woman spoke out over the hysterics. "Tell us clearly and more calmly now." Taking a deep breath, Astrid did so, more slowly and more clearly so that everyone would understand the severity of the situation. Then they would know of Hiccup's fraudulence. They would recognize the true prodigy amongst the newest dragon battlers. Everyone, evidently, did not understand her tale, as the small smiles of skepticism grew into a healthy round of chuckles. Astrid stood, shocked, having never been laughed at before in her life. Hiccup had fled the island like a coward on the back of that dragon like a traitor, and the troll-brained toothpick still managed to aggravate her. "Hiccup? My Hiccup?" Stoic said with a laugh half born of disbelief. Astrid started, not realizing that the chief had been present for her explanation. "It's true, sir," Astrid said, standing tall and proud as she was taught. "It was a Night Fury. It had to be." "Nonsense! He sends those dragons running every time he steps in the ring," someone shouted from the back of the crowd. "Because he uses tricks to control them," Astrid returned, trying to fight off the tenor of desperation. She kept her eyes locked with the chief's. "The dragon pounced, and when I went to defend myself, Hiccup attacked me. He made the dragon stop its attack. He made it listen, but I bet he could make it attack if he wanted to." No one listened to her. She saw too many heads shaking in the negative for her liking. "Go to the cove just southwest of Raven Point," Astrid cried out. "I've seen him disappearing off into that direction for weeks now. Ask anybody who sees him during the day when he's not in training. That's where he's been going. That's where the dragon was, a Night Fury." There it was, the flicker of doubt in those Icelandic green irises. Stoic the Vast may have been more knowledgeable of what his son was capable of, after all, especially since he had only seen Hiccup in the ring once. He still knew his son as someone who could not embrace the Viking way. Unfortunately, the chief seemed to give the only positive reaction as far as Astrid was concerned. "She's probably making up stories." "Jealous? Would never have thought it from her, but there you have it." Astrid saw relief repress the uncertainty in Stoic's stance as the whispers started. Settle down, Stoic called out in his deep Scottish burr. "Let's nae jump to any conclusions. I'm sure Hiccup will arrive back here at whatever hour he usually does, and it can all be worked out then. I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. Until then, let's just let the subject drop." The adults seemed more than happy with this arrangement, much more willing to think the best of their new, young prodigy and beloved chieftain. As the crowd of adults dispersed, leaving Astrid feeling momentarily lost in shock, her peers honed in on her, no doubt attracted to the yelling in the crowd. "What was that about?" Roughnut asked. Her braids swung as she came to a stop beside the girl. The rest of the guys kept their distance, picking up on Astrid's hostility. Astrid shook her head, still experiencing incredulity at being publicly dismissed like that. "This is bullshit." Snotlot edged closer to Astrid. Hiccup was harboring a night fury? Called it toothy or something, Astrid snarled, her hate for the situation mounting with every breath she took. She knew full well the thing's name was Toothless, but she couldn't bring herself to utter the title as though the dragon could be considered some sort of harmless pet. This was how he had been beating her in the training. He had been getting tricks from the very source. Just when Astrid thought her temper couldn't raise any higher, she felt her stomach churn and an ugly red began to blotch over her cheeks. It was just so underhanded, so deceitful, so wrong. Dragons attacked them, left and right. It went against everything they stood for as Vikings, and his farce had worked so well that some people were willing to believe him over her, when the very thought was laughable not 1 month ago. She shoved past Toughnut's shoulder, ignoring his squawk of indignation, and set a warpath to the training area. She needed to hit something. Hard. Unsurprising, the gang followed. Gossip trumped survival instincts every time when one lived on an island as small as Burke. Was it the one he claimed to have shot down? Fishlegs asked to no one in particular. Astrid almost stopped. She had completely forgotten about that incident, but now that she thought about it... Wait, you mean weeks ago in that last dragon raid? Toughnut asked. He scratched at a recently acquired burn on his arm. No way did that actually happen, Snotlout said, forcing more confidence in his voice than he actually felt. He may have respected his cousin for getting first place in dragon training, but taking down a Night Fury back when he was a useless geek was taking things a bit far. His pride couldn't handle that. No, think about it, Fishlegs said, getting excited. Hiccup uses his invention to take down a Night Fury, so naturally no one believes him. Then he suddenly gets better and better at dragon training, not using anything we were actually taught, and getting like plus 100 dragon fighting skills from nowhere. Astrid silently listened as she kept her fast pace and absorbed the other perspectives volunteered at her back. The timing did fit with Hiccup's claim. And how many Night Furies could there be? They seemed so rare. And he was gone all day, every day, more or less, Roughnut mused, recalling on what Astrid shouted at Burke not long ago. He made lots of excuses to get away from people. Toughnut rubbed his chin in a contemplative manner. It was weird now that I think about it. Yeah, now he thinks about it, Roughnut muttered, completely ignoring the fact that no one else beside Astrid questioned it at the time. Toughnut bristled. At least I wasn't all starry-eyed over him. You were too, Roughnut shouted back, before realizing that that wasn't the argument she should have been making. Shrugging at the insinuation, she gladly accepted her brother's tackle, taking a handful of his dreads and tugging fiercely. You said that it attacked you? Snoutlout continued to shadow Astrid, overstepping Roughnut's tangle of braids on the ground as she tumbled by. Too steamed to even give the tussling pair an eye roll, Astrid crossed the threshold into the rink before answering. Yeah, she said shortly. He tried to distract me at first from finding it. He was protecting it. Protecting a dragon from a Viking. How wrong can you get? As Astrid vented, Snotlout nodded sympathetically at her side, soaking up any opportunity to empathize with his crush. I should have put 2 and 2 together sooner. I'd seen him lugging around that riding gear, and then I find the dragon with a saddle on its back. He's riding the dragon? Snotlout yelled at the same time the twins crowed, Cool! Fishlegs looked like he just wet his pants. Cool! It is not cool, Astrid barked, whirling on them all. He's a cheat and a traitor, and an outcast. You'll see. He was packed to go. Said they were going on a vacation forever. He's not coming back, and then they, she thrust a finger towards her village, will all have to acknowledge what he really was. A fake. There was nothing cool about riding a dragon, or taming one, or controlling one. Nothing at all. Because it was wrong. Everything about Hiccup Horrendous Haddock was wrong, and that's the way things should be. He wasn't a great Viking warrior. Astrid's universe had shifted back into balance. Things were going to be okay for her once again. Once this mess was settled, she would go back to the top, where she belonged. She faced forward again and reached for the axe at her back, only to find it missing. Her cry of anguish echoed through the island. Ah! Hiccup!